Hey, what's up? My name is Kehrann, and welcome to our dev video. I'm one of the creators from Really Ragdoll, and we have Brian here as well.
Hi, I'm Brian. I am the other half of Really Ragdoll and really excited to show you our game today. Been a lot of work, and I am pretty stoked to actually be able to get to a point where we're able to let people play.
Yeah, man. Um, it has been a lot of work, but it's come along nicely.
Yeah, it's funny because this intro we didn't even really plan on having, and then we ended up getting it in towards the end, but it really grounds kind of the start of the story really well.
Yeah, it really puts the player in perspective, and it sets the mood for the whole game.
Yeah, this guy's grin at the end cracks me up still.
Yeah, I like the little jiggle he does.
That's so funny. This is ridiculously, wonderfully cheesy.
Yes, cheese is should be our slogan for this game.
Yeah.
There we
Find
go.
Marcia.
There's Marsha.
She'll guide you through the processing.
Got it.
I like the
Find
model we
Marsha.
finally ended up on for her.
Marcia.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the hologram style turned out really well.
Wow. That's comforting.
I'm glad we actually put her into the story a whole bunch more. She's almost a Hal, but a little different.
A little less annoying.
There are many workplace hazards on Mars. If you are injured,
Actually, a lot of characters kind of grew on us and then ended up being a lot bigger part of the story than they originally intended. Well, and actually, in all honesty, we expanded our story as we developed to give it a lot more story than we originally intended to.
Yeah, that's
Nice to
definitely
know
true.
I'm
Otis
appreciated.
actually turned out to be one of my favorite characters,
Yeah.
but he didn't always start out that way.
Well, a lot of it has to do too with you never know how good of a job a voice actor is going to do, and you have an idea. And sometimes voice actors just like meet your expectations, but every once in a while they'll like really impress you, and you're like, oh man, I gotta write this character in more.
Oh, yeah,
And here is the unplanned star of KUR.
the infamous Otis. And I love the relationship that Otis and the lead engineer have.
Yeah, it's great that relationship plus the later relationship with the player. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, it makes so much sense and it works out so well.
Oh yeah.
He very much outperformed our initial thoughts.
A big thing, like if you just explain our game without like the context of some of the VO, it sounds like a straight up horror game, right? Like, AI took over the earth, they stretch flesh over their bodies to make themselves look like what they think humans look like. That's pretty horrible. But when you have one of those, flesh wearing basketballs, basically, which is what Otis almost is, be the conductor of a train or the lead engineer of a train, right? It gets pretty ridiculous pretty quick.
Oh yeah, especially a conductor of a train who our nerdy villain mercilessly yells at.
Yeah. So this is probably the only instance where we ended up going like way bigger in scope than we originally planned, like this level specifically, and the terrain that's moving outside. You can see there. We
Yeah.
originally were thinking we're just going to do like, let's just do a flat plane and put a moving material on it. But we actually ended up getting pretty cool looking. I'm pretty proud of it. Moving terrain, so the train really feels like it's moving while you're playing.
Yeah, it worked out really, really well. I'm very happy with the result. It makes for a nice, unique FPS level. I think a lot of people, if they remember one level from the game, hopefully it would be this train level.
Yeah. Also, the pacing of it is really nice right after a boss level. It's pretty linear. There are a lot of different things you can find. Like this is a secret right here. There's a couple alternate ways to like advance, but for the most part, it's a nice brain break from level 3, which is pretty big, and there's some labyrinthy parts, and then level 5, which is this big open. You have to manage a lot of enemies, and then you have to. Sorry, I think I said level 5, meant level 4, where you have to manage a lot of enemies, then fight a boss.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice, interesting transition between bigger levels. I think we actually do a pretty unique mechanic in this level later on, where it sort of gives you an ultimatum where you can sort of stop the train and see where that goes. And if that doesn't happen, you actually get a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah. So there's a wee bit of a surprise.
So it's actually really cool. Our level just doesn't restart if you fail that objective. There's a little bit of, alternate pathways you can take.
So one big stretch goal we didn't get to, and we're not going to get to, so I don't mind sharing it because it would be a spoiler otherwise. Is we were going to have it that you could, jump off the train and just aimlessly wander for a while. And I don't know if you remember like the old ski game where you're trying to ski down the mountain and then the Yeti comes and gets you.
Yeah.
We were going to do something like that where you get far enough away from the train, some giant unbeatable monster comes and kills you.
Yeah, I do remember that idea. Oh man, yeah. Not a spoiler anymore. Please don't jump off the train.
No, don't. Or do. We definitely went a lot more breakable than we. I don't think we really intended much to be breakable at all. We just were gonna maybe have some explosive barrels, bootables, but at some point we just thought like, oh, it'd be cool if we could break things. Or I think we did break them, but like in really, really rudimentary ways.
Yeah. But I think once we got the door kicking in and then the barrel started to explode, we're like, okay.
Yeah, the boot is definitely not taken advantage enough if it can't smash things.
Yeah, definitely. And if we ever get a chance to make a KUR 2, I definitely want to utilize the boot smashing a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. We actually, um, dipped our toe into some type of looter shooter type thing with some of these crates and some of these breakables. Do you have a little bit of randomness in what they drop? That's another thing I'd like to play on with KUR 2 as well, especially if we can expand weaponry to be more than just like, hey, these are your 9 weapons. If there's like mods or, even more of like an inventory style thing. I would just like to venture into that looter shooter realm a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. In sort of the same realm, I'd like more interaction as well, and just sort of hype everything up a little bit more to the next level.
Yeah, one thing we didn't get in this that goes along with what we're both saying is we did actually originally have a pretty big kind of skill tree planned. As usual, scoping in indie games means that things get cut. But we ended up with some pretty cool upgrades, but that's another thing that I think could make KUR 2 pretty awesome is some type of elaborate skill tree.
Yeah, it sort of sucks we didn't get there. At least we got the 4 basic upgrades. They definitely add some fun to the game, but a whole skill tree will be fantastic if we can do that. Yeah, here we go. Here's our lead engineer.
V1, first encounter.
There you go. A little bit of foreshadowing there.
You're doing what now?
It's funny because I don't know if we had a plan on this lead engineer's voice, but this kind of weird, arrogant, almost Simpsons comic book voice turned out really good.
Oh yeah. It turned out just as funny and cheesy as I wanted to go for.
And Steve will beg for my mercy.
We tried. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say this little arena fight turned out pretty nicely with that those drain pipes of acid.
Yeah, I was gonna say something too about that, like him typing and the acid drains. We really tried to make these scenes immersive and interactive, and I think we did a pretty good job. It does usually feel like the enemies are doing something in this area, and you're really messing them up and participating in like the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
Oh, so this level actually was a much later addition. We didn't plan on adding this level at all. Um,
Isn't there an
and
That's right.
eventually we said, well, why don't we throw a sneak preview of this type of environment?
All right
This
then.
whole
And they
digital realm.
I'm not scared.
right, and originally it was just like, okay, well, let's just throw a plane in and like barely preview it, and then it turned out to be pretty fun, so it grew into its own level.
Yeah, I really like the look. It sort of sets you up really well for the rest of this sort of KUR realm, as we call it, or this sort of digital matrix universe.
I am really excited to, because we do lay a pretty good amount of story in, and we uh, tell people a bit about what's going on, but there's a lot of ambiguity too, and that's on purpose. And I'm really curious to see what like hypothesis players come up with and what their reasons for things existing are.
Yeah, and that would I think some interesting theories can be made. Yeah, the cathedral and the organ and that whole vibe of the KUR realm really fits, and yeah, I'm really happy how that turned out. And speaking of KUR and the whole KUR realm, for anybody that's wondering why our game is called KUR, it's actually based on an ancient civilization called the Sumerians, and their word for the underworld was KUR. Sort of like hell, but less fiery, more sort of dusty like our lost souls.
Yeah, a little bit more like a cross between hell and limbo, this
There you go.
weird underworld. And why might this digital realm be themed like that? You'll just have to play the game.
Yeah.
Come up
there
with
you
your
go.
own theories. Sometimes, Key, I think maybe we should have like a contest at the end of explain the game to us. And explain the game to us contest. Explain the game to the creators contest.
Yeah, what did we make? You tell us.
We, sometimes you just get ideas to add little things, and that statue there we added recently, and it just kind of gives this whole thing this almost like awe-inspiring, but almost like a little bit. I want to kind of say like religious, but not religious. What would you call that? Mysterious or?
Yeah, almost prolific. Sort of,
Yeah.
it's otherworldly as well. It gives it this very, inspiring, awe-inspiring vibe, like you said.
Yep.
And that whole KUR realm, I think, sort of delivers that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And the music does too. I mean, Felix had done such a great job. We give Felix really vague, non-musical direction, and he takes that and turns it into something really beautifully, musically perfect.
Yeah, he plays the level a few times, and then we're just blown away by what he shows us.
Okay, to get to the maintenance ship, you'll have to get past the maintenance spot. I'm sure it won't be too hard.
What's that now? I swear I was just somewhere else. And now I'm here.
Yep, you were somewhere else, then you went through the teleporter to the core. Come on, keep it together.
And this boss fight is a really good example of how we try to put a little bit of thought into some things like these, and you sort of have to use your environment to sort of phase this boss out and make him vulnerable to all your big bad bullets.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I would say where you and I had the most like hashing out, that we really talked things out, a lot of design discussions, was around a lot of these bosses.
Yeah.
But another place that we did that and we got close to arguing was whether this game was a horror or not.
I remember.
And we I think we kind of ended somewhere up in the middle of what we wanted to do, and we took different ideas from both of us and ended up with this like, well, like some places we do want to be a bit scary because that sells the ridiculousness more and it immerses the player into it. But some places we want to be, completely off the wall ridiculous and try to make the player laugh.
Yep.
And I think it's that kind of dichotomy, or that really big contrast in the moments that you have that make each one unique and fun.
Yeah, no, I think that's what gives this game a little bit of character and sort of separates it from the
How did
others.
I get
Um,
here?
we definitely lean
Was that a
into
dream?
the personality that we want this game to be.
The station's been damaged.
Yes,
and
we
life
do.
support
Yeah.
sustainment is offline.
Yeah, that is something that describes KUR pretty well. It's got a lot of personality.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Since I seem to be still living, and I'd like to continue doing so, I'll get right on that.
Well, if we're going to talk about space station, we got to talk about zero gravity.
Yes. You love it or hate it. I have a feeling most of you will hate it, but please don't hate us.
Yeah. It definitely, there's certain aspects of a game that really make developers work hard to bridge the gap between keyboard, mouse, and gamepad.
Yeah.
Zero gravity and swimming has been one of those things for us that we've been. I would definitely say it's been a struggle, but we're getting to points where it feels good on both.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about, being a little ambitious and trying some things that are unique. And, zero grav more than swimming is definitely one of those things for our game. But luckily, we don't overstay our welcome.
Yeah, exactly. We only make you learn a frustrating mechanic until you've learned it, and then we move on to the next one. No, just kidding.
And wonky movement aside, I'm really proud of this space station. I think it's a pretty cool atmosphere, and it sort of flips the whole pacing on its head. And story-wise, hopefully there's some good lore theories on that.
We do have some, pretty good arena fights. It's taken a while to really get the balance down and, placement of these guys. But I think the arena fights really do shine these days.
Yeah, and especially later in the game with the increased enemy variety, like those little patchwork, ball guys that sort of shoot around and then open up and fire some laser beams at you. Just all the different types of enemies really sort of come together and keep you on your toes.
This arena is pretty cool, especially, a lot of the glow and that really interesting texture we got there. It looks really cool when there's a lot of enemies shooting, too.
Yeah, all the projectiles really stand out. This is one of the most sci-fi arena fights aesthetically to me.
Yeah. This, I think, actually technically is the first level we've ever made. I think this was built out of the prototype,
yeah.
right?
Yes, it was.
Authorizing
Actually, yeah, from
security
the very
personnel.
first prototype,
Standby.
this was our first level.
This could be really good
I think it shows in
or
some
really
ways. But yeah, definitely a level to be dealt with.
It's
bad. And it's not even my
excuse me, it's gone
birthday.
over a ton of iterations, so it's quite a bit different than the original. But yeah, this open garage bay kind of theme that we have at this level was the first thing we tried to do, and it served pretty well because it had a lot of corridors and it had like this big open area, so it made us consider kind of the two different main scenarios you're going to encounter these guys.
Yeah, exactly. We sort of found we wanted a mix of close encounters that sort of open up sometimes and let that boot fly. If we do get to expand on this game, though, I definitely want to take advantage of the boot mobility more, though. But I think it's a good mix.
Yeah. Funny thing about the boot is when this level was first finished, there was no boot.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That was kind of an afterthought that turned into our, best idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, maybe after this level and the first level were made, is when we really decided to start leaning in on the boot and making doors kickable and sort of propelling yourself around that thing.
Yeah, right now, we would love to have more interaction with the boot, and I think like if we do end up making a sequel, not only just like increasing the mobility you have with the boot, increasing the breakables, but making more levels really feel like the boot gives you this really powerful mobility between verticality and getting to different ledges and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's definitely some later levels in this game that take advantage of that a little bit more than others. But we can really go all out in some DLC or some KUR 2. Yeah, this was actually one of maybe our second or third level that was ever created, and this basketball court has stayed true.
Yeah. There's so many things you want to do as a dev, especially when you're, touching everything in a game like we are. There's so many places where you look at and you're like, God, this was awesome. I wish we could have done like, a full basketball game somehow.
Yeah.
This full challenge, but you get in what you can and then you save your ideas for the next game.
Yeah, definitely. There's always more that we can add. But at some point you have to call it.
Yeah. I'm definitely proud of the things that we got in. We really stood our ground on some pretty hilarious, really important points of the game. Even though we did have to, cut things, I think we made really wise decisions on the things to cut. Ended up with like a really solid, meaty game.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I think at one point we planned to have like 30 plus levels, and with how long our levels turned out, that would have been an insane amount of work to get done in the time we've spent so far.
Yeah, speaking of that, one thing I'm really interested to see once the game is released, and even as we test more, is the average playtime that people that beat the game have.
Oh yeah.
It's so tough because we design these levels, a lot of them in a way where you can really explore, you can go through a lot, there's a lot of Easter eggs, but you can also speedrun a lot of them. And I'm really curious how long it takes, the average player to beat it.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm really curious to see how many secrets and speedrun routes the average player will find. Because like you mentioned, we specifically designed alternate routes that are shortcuts that beat the level much quicker. So they're sort of just waiting for people to exploit them and find them. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it all turns out.
For those of you that are listening to this right now, you should definitely find all the secrets because there's going to be some pretty hilarious rewards for you.
Yes. I actually think this is the first cutscene we ever made.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. It turned out pretty good, actually.
Yeah. That was sort of my trial and error test to see if we could even manage cutscenes.
And actually, they're a huge part of our storytelling now.
Yeah.
This boss really evolved in a lot of different ways. I don't know that we had some like kind of interesting ideas in the beginning, but it really evolved in a way that really fits the level really well.
Yeah, I agree. Our first iterations, ideally what we ultimately wanted to do was a little out of scope in our first iterations. Didn't quite get the job done. But I think this sort of digging animation and it popping back up unexpectedly and shooting around these acid pools is just so much more dynamic. And I haven't seen too many bosses that dig underneath you.
Yeah.
Hello?
So
Anyone
speaking
there?
of, the boss design seems, it's an easy thing to kind of cop out on because you're a retro FPS and
Happy to
a lot of
hear
these
your
bosses
voice
were pretty
too.
simple, but
Thank you,
something that
Shivers.
we really wanted to
Very
deliver
nice
some
of
pretty
that.
unique, dynamic fights
Look,
with
my
multiple
contract didn't
stages
say
and
shit about
various
red
strategies you can
bean, and
take, and I think it
guess
worked
we're
pretty
in
well.
robots.
Yeah, we have some pretty interesting things going on, and sometimes you got to use your brain a little bit, or even the environment. Um,
Huh.
so yeah, I think they're a little
Red
more
contract.
dynamic
Alright,
than
fine.
just the average
Anyway,
bullet tank.
you've managed to restore comms to the train, and it should take you to the research facility. But listen,
Hello? Shit, calms out again?
Stand by.
Flying kick.
Looks like I need to work on my landing.
All right, here's our school level. Oh man, was this one of our later levels?
This was actually probably the closest of all the levels that made it out. This is the closest one to being on the chopping block.
Yeah, yeah. When we decided to scope down from the 30 or whatever levels we originally attended, this was very close to getting cut. But ultimately, I'm glad we didn't. And actually, this is one of my favorite mini boss fights in this level, so even more reason I'm glad we didn't decide to chop it.
Yeah, the mini boss in this, I would say like a 3/4 boss.
Yeah, very true. It's like somewhere
Yeah,
between a mini boss and a regular boss.
and you'll see once it comes up a little bit later. But yeah, we definitely not just pushed the ridiculous envelope. We put postage on it and mailed ourselves in.
We did.
Yeah, we went full ridiculous on this.
Oh yeah, our biggest inspiration, I'll just say before you see that boss, is if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge anything.
Yep. It took a little while to really get enemies to behave in ways that made open spaces.
So that
There was definitely a while that it felt pretty. Mm, it felt like they didn't know their surroundings very well.
yeah, definitely. Um, they are certainly starting to flesh out and feel a lot better. Our
Haha,
range
I
enemies
see
are
what you did
beginning
there.
to
Flesh out, flesh out.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, our flying enemies as well are playing a little bit bigger of a part.
Yep. The kind of unsung hero though is the little skull crabs, or skull snails, as I heard them called too, because they don't do a ton of damage, but their sound is great. They're great little jump scares, and I don't know, they do enough damage to be really annoying.
Yeah, yeah. They draw your attention just enough that if you don't shoot them the first thing you see, then there'll be 3 more behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this level is great. This was also a bit of a actually we planned on having the quest levels that come off this as levels, but I think originally we planned on having them be kind of like this linear progression of levels, not this
Yeah,
interesting hub where you get to choose which order you do them in.
yeah, yeah. And this is definitely something I'm super excited to see player response by. Um, I think some people will wonder why this is in the middle of a retro shooter, but I think it gives it so much character, and I really like the hub world. I'd love to explore it for a DLC or even a second game.
Yes, and I also, if we ever did do multiplayer, especially with KUR 2, I'd love the idea of these hub worlds where you could have a larger amount of people together, and then you can get a squad together and go play a mission or something like that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, my previous
And plus, I
employer
just
didn't
love
have
designing all these
ghost
weird, wonky characters.
What's the plan?
Yeah, this level definitely gives me some Half-Life vibes. Speaking of Key, what games were you most inspired by when making KUR?
Yeah, great question. I'd say really, Half-Life was one of the first that came to mind for me. That's sort of like I don't know, an all-time favorite. I sort of grew up watching that get played in my house. And then Duke Nukem, I'd say, were like the first two games that came into mind. Of course, Doom as well, but those are sort of what inspired the character of KUR and how we wanted it to come across in the personality. And then, all-time greats when it comes to combat is Doom Eternal, and Doom in general. So that's always been inspiration. Just trying to have gunplay that good would be amazing, or even a combat loop that had addicting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, those were all inspirations for me too. Actually, GoldenEye definitely had some inspiration for me.
Oh yeah.
Dead Space a bit, and then non-games. Event Horizon definitely influenced us a bit in the space station levels.
Yeah. Dead Space and Event Horizon are really two really good ones. When we thought of the whole space station vibe, that was like our go-to right there.
Yeah, exactly. Quake, a little bit with our movement and combat style, little influence there.
That's actually funny you mentioned that. Our movement code is pretty much based on a Quake port.
Oh yeah, it fits really well.
It does.
We did have some trouble developing because we have this super fast movement, right? And then we threw in the boot, which has a ton of physics around it. You're changing directions really quickly. You're launching yourself into things, out of things, crouching in the air, crouch sliding, and moving really fast. And it definitely took us a while to get the physics feeling pretty right.
It definitely took us a minute. I remember when we first introduced the parkour boot, it was so game-breaking, and we had to sort of tone down the power of the boot, but then it just sort of felt weak, and we had to sort of think for a minute, okay, let's just, tone down the velocity on the y-axis so you don't go as high. So there was sort of a lot of nuances that we had to overcome before it felt right,
Yeah, you're right. And I think the parkour boot, of all the things we've did, the parkour boot is probably the thing that I wish we would have had an idea for earlier.
Yeah.
Mainly because it's been the most level design breaking thing that we've had, as you mentioned. And had we thought about it a little earlier, it would have been nice to incorporate it a little bit more into some of the challenges. As it is, we've got it in there, and it definitely makes great use in combat. But one thing, if we did a sequel or were even to do some DLC for this, really like to play on some of the acrobatic capabilities you get with the boot.
Yeah. I definitely agree. It'd be really cool to see even some, just sort of like speedrun maps that are meant for like races or something. You sort of have to use that acrobatic boot or something.
If you've been listening this long, thanks for watching with us, and we're super excited to share this game. We've been working on it, pouring our hearts into this game for a couple years now, and I think we've really created something that you're going to have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, that's, the one word I have heard back from testers, regardless of all the bugs or frustrations, with the space station movement or whatever. They always usually say it's fun, so that makes my heart happy that people actually play this game and enjoy it. So I hope many more people enjoy it, and I can't wait for everybody to try it out.
Now back to work.
Yes, let's go fix bugs.
Yeah, let's go squash the bugs.